Been in the BFC since I was 6 days old. So got a couple of weeks in it and have enjoyed most of it. The vision development is what we're talking about this morning, and it's interested me for at least the last 15 years. And I'm not sure I know why. I guess I had done some visioning earlier in my life, but mostly in regards to planning vacations. And then realized that if I spent as much time planning and executing work as I did on my vacations, maybe I'd get something done in life. But I'm not sure. It is true for most people, however. They've done some tests and some surveys, and they found out that most people spend more time planning their 2 weeks vacation than they do spending or planning 50 weeks of their life. But I digress. When it comes to focusing your vision, I've spent a lot of time on this. I've read dozens of books. I've had lots of classes on the subject. And unfortunately, as I began to put together some information, I've neglected to record all of my sources. So now I have a lot of stuff from a lot of people, but I can't remember who said or wrote what. So for the sake of full disclosure, most of this material comes from one or the following individuals: Bill Lawrence, Kent Hughes, Chuck Swindoll, Howard Hendricks, Andy Stanley, Aubrey Malpers, Will Mancini, Joseph Myers, Randy Pope, Tim Passmore, Bill Donahue, and others. So nothing that I have to say to you this morning is original. I learned a long time ago that there is nothing new under the sun. I think I read that in the Bible, like Solomon. So if you've heard of some of this material before, or if you've read some of it before, it's possible, it's probable, hopefully it was helpful, and I trust that this will be also. So much for my disclaimer and the possible copyright infringements. Everybody ends up somewhere in life. A few people end up somewhere on purpose. Those are the ones who have vision. Now, they may have other things going for them as well, but they certainly have vision. And it's not necessarily a singular vision, but it's a vision for each of the key roles that they're assigned along the way. Life is a journey, and every journey has a destination. And you only get somewhere if you go somewhere. I think that goes without saying. But ultimately, that journey ends in heaven or in hell, but we'll not be discussing the ultimate end of the journey. What we'll be discussing the journey is the part that we call life. Now, if I were to ask you to describe how you picture your life or the life of your church or ministry in 10 years from now, chances are that some of you could paint a fairly clear picture. Hopefully, you could outline a financial picture that you could see for your life in 10 years from now or the ministry. And some might actually have some relational achievements that they'd like to have happen within the next 10 years. You might have an idea of a professional goal. In other words, you might be able to paint a picture of what could be and what might be in life 10 years from now, if you thought about it. And that's vision. A focused vision, along with the courage to carry it through, dramatically increases your chances of coming to the end of your life, looking back with a deep satisfaction and thinking, I did it, I succeeded, I finished well. My life counted. Now, that works on a personal level. It works in ministry just as well. So if you're leading a church or if you're leading a group of people and you're not going anywhere or not doing anything, you won't get anywhere or achieve anything. And too often we get bogged down in the mundane and the tyranny of the urgent, and we discover that we're doing the same things the same way and seeing very little development or movement, and sometimes we wonder why. Well, a focused vision will help move us off of that plateau. So, what is the importance of a focused vision? Well, a focused vision is crucial to ministry and it's crucial to life as well. Without it, you're like a cowboy without a horse, a surgeon without a scalpel, a carpenter without a hammer, a computer programmer without a computer. Churches without God's vision are destined to plateau, and as we've looked at the life cycles of churches in America and around the world, eventually they die. And so I want to give you some reasons why a focused vision is important, and this is why I gave you papers in front of you to give you something to do while I'm just rambling on and on and on. So that's why it's there. No? So first of all, a focused vision clarifies direction. Now, most churches have not thought about it. In fact, only 2% of pastors can articulate the vision of their church, according to George Barna. 2%. Pretty sad. And if the pastors don't know where they're going, if the pastors have a lack of mission, surely they cannot see where they're actually going. A boat that's sitting in the water might float. In fact, down in the Philadelphia Christopher Columbus Boulevard, Penn's Landing is the USA. Is it the USA or something? United States. Beautiful, big boat. It's been there for what, 40 years? It floats, it exists, but it's not going anywhere. Just a boat sitting in the water. I'd rather go on a cruise. I don't know about you, but I'd like to go somewhere. Just moving is a whole lot better than just sitting stationary. Followers want to follow someone who's going somewhere. Those who aim at nothing hit it every time. That's the truism. People cannot focus on fog. If God's people to accomplish great things for Him, they must know what it is they're setting out to accomplish. Unfortunately, most churches fall into one of three categories. A lot of churches have no vision and they're headed nowhere. They're just doing church. We've been doing it this way. We're going to keep doing it this way. Some churches, on the other hand, have multiple ministries with many directions. Then they have confused people with head spinning because they don't know what's going on. There's so many things happening in their church and they don't know where to get involved. And often what happens is the church ends up split because there's different directions. And there's some churches that just plain old have the wrong vision. They don't recognize that the Great Commission gives us a direction to go. And they've just taken and said, well, we're just going to be a teaching church. We're just going to be a counseling church. We're just going to be a worshiping church. We're not going to do discipleship. And I think there's something wrong there. A focused vision also invites unity. It invites unity. There's lots of scripture on this. Psalm 133, I think, is one of the classic passages on unity. I'm sure you guys know it. If you haven't memorized it, it's a real easy one to memorize. Beloved, or behold how good it is and pleasant when brothers dwell in unity. It's like the precious oil on the head running down on the beard of Aaron, running down on the collar of his robes. Talk about a picture. Hope you can picture that. It's like the dew of Hermon which falls on the mountains of Zion. There the Lord commanded the blessing, which is life evermore. Lots of passages that talk about unity. But a church-wide vision, a ministry vision, invites or affects the recruitment of personnel, hired or voluntary. If people know who you are and where you're going, and that's their passion, they're much more likely to join in. It keeps those going in a different direction out of the picture. Spiritually gifted working people who are working together to accomplish a focused ministry vision. A focused vision invites unity. Thirdly, a focused vision facilitates function. Facilitates function. You know, a lot of churches are stuck in the 1960s. In fact, if the 1950s ever come back again, or the early 1960s, they will be ready, and they will be cutting edge. But if you're really good at manual typewriter repair, and you don't do iPad repair, you're probably not going to have a whole lot of customers. And many churches are just like that. Randy Pope, who is a pastor at Perimeter Church outside of Atlanta, he expressed a sentiment, and he compared the church within which he grew up during the 1950s with the church that he went back to 10 years ago, his parents' church. He wrote, "Today, the dynamic growing church where I first heard the gospel is still faithful to the same message. Its orthodoxy has never changed, and neither has anything else. You can walk into this church today and you feel like you stepped back in time. The same worship service, the same basic program offerings, and the same people, just older and grayer. This church today has approximately 80 people on an average Sunday, and the average age of those present is over 80. And I'm sure this story could be echoed thousands of times over throughout the country." Focused vision facilitates function. What a vision does uniquely for a church is paint a portrait of what God intends for the ministry to accomplish so that all can see it. And it looks at the community and it adjusts to changes that happen. Number 4, a focused vision enhances leadership. Where are the leaders? Who are the leaders? Who will replace the current leaders? What will it take for leadership in the future? Defining a focused vision and then living it are essential elements of leadership. A godly leader is a person who knows and sees where he or she is going. That is mission and vision. And they actually have followers. They have influence. And that describes the disciples and it describes others in the early church. They display a Christ-like attitude and character. They are people of integrity who exhibit the fruit of the Spirit and engender trust. Those who see these people will follow them. You can use illustrations of people, of leaders who others have followed, such as Martin Luther King. There are a lot of people who have followed those who actually know where they're going. And there are those who don't. And we don't follow them. But number 6 is that a focused vision prompts passion. It prompts passion. Mediocrity is a problem in many churches today. Doing things the same old way just to do them. Over the years, this leads to a maintenance mentality. You're doing just enough to get by. Younger people, that is younger than me, that now puts a lot of people into the bracket, the older I get. But younger people will not tolerate this, and they will not, and they'll leave. Passion and vision work hand in hand in life and in ministry. Vision is a seeing word, and it involves our heads. Passion's a feeling word. It involves our hearts, our emotions. When passionate people feel strongly about something, it leads to a focused vision. A compelling, focused vision fuels passion. You remember in Paul in Romans 15, verse 20, he talked about his preaching that he didn't want it in vain. In fact, he said, I am willing to die for the sake of my people Israel. He had passion for that. And a focused vision prompts passion. Number 6, a focused vision offers sustenance. A focused vision offers sustenance. Leading in ministry or in life can be difficult at times. Dan talked about that earlier. There's obstacles, and we'll talk about some of them later. Spiritual warfare comes at us when we try to do good things for God. And many have become martyrs for the sake of the gospel. Well, what keeps them going? Well, what keeps them going is a passion for ministry, a passion for the future that says this is what could be and what should be. William Wilberforce in England had a passion to get rid of slavery. And although he was a preacher by trade, his passion kept him going, his vision kept him going and changed the face of history. Luther, Martin Luther, John Calvin, all the disciples and the apostles, Peter, Paul, James, etc. Number 7, a focused vision creates energy. It creates energy. Visions are exciting and energizing. They energize people, either your church or your family. It creates a spark that lifts you out of the mundane and lights a fire. In a church that enables leaders to stop putting out fires and start igniting fires. And it inspires people because it challenges people to get out of the routine and mundane and accomplish great things for God. Creates energy. I remember just talking to my kids about going on vacation. And like, here's where we plan to go. And they'd say, yeah, let's go, let's do it. And our vacations were mostly hop in the car and drive. That's all we did. Yeah, we drove around the country a couple of times, but at least we got there. Pastor Mahurin's vacation, he goes fishing. Excitement, he knows he's going to go fishing next week or the following week. Following, he's going down to Florida, he's going fishing. There's energy there, you can tell he's getting excited about it. A focused vision creates energy. A focused vision provides purpose. It gives meaning to people's lives. It gives them a sense of something bigger, greater than what it is now. Something that is going to bring glory to God. People in a pew become part of a powerful impact on the community. They're not just a pew warmer. They're not simply doing church. They're on a mission from God. I probably will get struck down by my father, who said I should never go see movies, but I love the Blues Brothers. Do you remember the movie The Blues Brothers in Chicago? They were on a mission from God. It drove them. It provided purpose. A great car race, wrecks and stuff in that movie. It's just wonderful. Still watch it. But anyhow, it's providing purpose. A youth pastor is not just a teacher of teenagers. A youth pastor is really an influencer of an entire generation who's going to someday accomplish great things for God. It just changes it. A focused vision. And then 9th, A focused vision motivates giving. People will not give money or an effort to a cause that isn't going anywhere. Wise donors invest their money for the sake of Christ, and they won't invest it where there's not going to be a return on their investment. People are moved to give to an organization that projects a clear, focused vision of what they believe to be God's future for that organization. A focused vision says that the ministry is dynamic, it's not static. It encourages them to give their time and their talent. And a focused vision will affect people's personal values and their felt needs. They'll find the time and the money to assist what they value. So having mentioned the importance of a focused vision, what specifically are we discussing? So what are the aspects of a focused vision? Let's define our terms so we know what we're all talking about. First of all, what's a vision? I simplified it. A vision is a preferred picture of the future. That's enough. It's just, here's the future, I can see it. That's it. A vision is better than the present. A vision is worthy of people's lives. A vision lifts people to a new level of faith and fruit. But having said that, let's differentiate it from some other words that are often confused with it. First of all, a vision is not a dream. A dream is broader than a vision. And a dream may fuel a vision, but a dream is not a vision. A dream's not compelling. You don't have to accomplish your dreams. Maybe you don't dream at night. But if I have a nice big meal before I go to bed, I can guarantee I'm going to dream. And I wake up in the morning and I say, where did that come from? I'm not compelled to accomplish any of those things. But they were interesting. A dream is not compelling. It doesn't drive you to, or have the specificity to make something happen. But a vision is a clear picture of the future. It may have come out of a dream, but it's more concise and precise than a dream. A vision is not a goal or an objective. Goals and objectives are cold, abstract things that may help fulfill a vision, but they follow a vision. They don't precede a vision. A vision's a colorful picture that draws people to it. It's not a list of things on a shopping list. Also, a vision is not a purpose. Well, what is purpose? Purpose is, for our discussion, the unique reason why you or your organization, your ministry exists. It's the one thing it must accomplish no matter what. It's why. Why do you exist? What do you have to accomplish? Purpose answers the question. Why are we doing this? The purpose is big. The purpose can't change. But the vision's going to change as life goes on. The uniqueness of vision is that it focuses on the future. Remember, this vision is not the same as a purpose. The purpose declares why something exists. It's unchanging. In fact, the only thing that could possibly change our purpose as a church is the coming of Christ. When He comes back, we'll be different. We won't be doing church. A vision focuses on the future. It looks to where you or your ministry is going with its purpose. It declares what the future of the purpose will be like over a period of time. It focuses on the future and acts to make the future more inviting rather than threatening. But a vision changes when the future changes. A vision is also not a mission. A mission is a statement of where you are going. A vision is a picture of what waits for you when you get there. Vision affects planning to get somewhere. A vision affects communication of that place. A mission statement is short. A vision speaks of many things. The purpose is to inform others where you're going. The vision is to inspire them. The mission involves the activities of accomplishing the future. The vision sees the future. The mission is a head thing. The vision is a heart thing. A mission is taught. A vision is caught. So what are the differences between a mission and a vision? Well, a mission is a statement, whereas a vision is a picture. This is our mission, but this is what it looks like when we get there. What's the application? The application of a mission is planning. How are we going to accomplish this mission? The application of a vision is communication. What's it look like? How will we know it? The length of a mission statement is short. Our mission is to Make disciples of Jesus Christ. Come on. Our vision is, it's long and it's wordy. It could be pages and pages long. Because it's going to include more things. It's going to paint a picture. You can't paint a picture with one stroke. The activity or the purpose of a mission is to inform. The purpose of a vision is to inspire. The activity of a mission is doing something. The activity of a vision is seeing something. The source of a mission is your head. It's what we're doing. Think about it. The source of a vision is your heart. You feel it. And the development of a mission is science. It is something which is taught. Whereas a focused vision, the development of it is art. It's caught. You catch it. So in life and in ministry, you need to have a purpose. Why are you doing what you're doing? You need to have a mission. Where are you going? And you need to have a vision. What will be there when you get there? So let's try some examples. Let's say you're involved in education and you're going to school. You could say, why am I going to get an education? Well, that would be your mission. I'm going to do this. Well, where will we be going? We're going to graduate. We're looking forward to that big day when we graduate. Well, what happens when you get there? I finally got that college degree and now I can go do something else. So it works. How about vacation? My forte, my passion. I love going on vacation. Well, why are we going on vacation? We're going to vacate. That's what the word vacation means. We're going away. Well, where are we going? Well, one time my wife said, I'd like to go to the zoo. So we thought, Philly, been there, San Diego. Now there's a vacation. So we drove to San Diego for the weekend. Turned around and came back. All right, so where are we going? What will it be like when we get there? Well, it's this great big zoo. And you got these all sorts of things. You ever been to San Diego Zoo? Anybody been there? It's a great zoo. It's the best zoo. So we had this picture in our mind. So it worked. The purpose, the mission, the vision. How about ministry? Why do we have a ministry? Because God gave it to us. Where are we going? We are going to make disciples. What will be the result of that? God's kingdom will be built. The church will be completed. So, purpose, mission, vision, all different, all important. One other phrase that needs to be defined, and that is a core value. What is a core value? A core value is a principle, a standard, or a quality to which you are committed and that lies at the heart of what you are and identifies or defines your identity. All of us have core values. As individuals, you have core values. These are things that are important to you. And as a church, you have core values. They make us different than others. What we value, we esteem. We hold up as a standard. We will not sweat. It's what makes us unique. A focused vision makes core values even more valuable. A vision is not the same as a value. Values control the vision, and they help define the measuring standards that must be in place to make sure the vision is in fact a true one. In establishing a vision, you start with your core values. You have to start with who you are. For who you are now. Knowing who you are helps you know what you can or could do, and then the purpose and the mission provides the impetus for creating a vision that will accomplish that purpose and fulfill the mission over a period of time. Well, what's the inception of a focused vision? What's a focused vision? Where do they come from? Well, visions are born in the soul of one who's consumed with the tension between what is and what could be. They form in the souls of those who are dissatisfied with the status quo. Visions begin with the inability to accept things the way they are. And that dissatisfaction matures into a clear picture of what actually could be. But it's more than just an idea or a dream. There's a moral element, a sense of conviction, a sense of urgency. The future's not a dream. It's something that could be done, something that needs to be done. And it moves you from inactivity to action. You remember the statement by Todd Beamer, "Let's roll." You can talk about it, but until you do it, it didn't happen. It's the moral element that gives a vision a sense of urgency. It's what could be fueled by what should be. Remember, vision is a preferred picture of the future. It's not here, it's a destination. And it may demand change. It implies movement. It requires a champion. It requires an individual who has the courage to act. Let's consider the time of Nehemiah. We're going to go there for a little bit this morning. You remember the time of Nehemiah? The Israelites were taken captive by the Babylonians in 605 and then 586 BC. And then the Persians conquered the Babylonians, and a lot of the Israelites were over there. A lot of the Jews were there under the Persians. Cyrus the Great came along. He commanded the temple to be rebuilt under Zerubbabel. He allowed that to happen. The temple was under disrepair, but they built the temple, and then time flies. And so we come to the time of Nehemiah, which is now 100 years later. And Nehemiah becomes burned. So if you have your Bibles, we're looking at Nehemiah chapter 1, verses 1 through 4. And the text says, "Now it happened in the month of Chislev, in the 12th year, as I was in Susa, the capital, Nehemiah says that Hananiah, one of my brothers, came with certain men from Judah. I asked them about the Jews who had escaped, who survived the exile, concerning Jerusalem. And they said to me, the remnant there in the province who had survived the exile is in great trouble and shame. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down and its gates are destroyed by fire. And as soon as I heard these words, I sat down and wept and mourned for days. And I continued fasting and praying before the God of heaven." There's a couple of things that we can learn from Nehemiah concerning a focused vision. First of all, a focused vision begins as a concern. It begins as a concern. A God-ordained vision will always be a concern about the status quo. Something gets your attention. Something generates an emotion. Something bothers you. You think about it. It sticks. Why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we growing? What's not happening? Why aren't we reaching the community? What's going on? And you lose sleep. And it seems like Nehemiah's concern over Jerusalem broke his heart because he thought of what could be and what should be. And it changed him. And everybody knew about it, at least in his town. But what did he do? Well, physically, he didn't do anything, but he did the most important thing first. And we find that in verse 5 through 11. And that is, he prayed. He prayed. Look what the text says. "And I said, O Lord God of heaven, the great and awesome God who keeps covenant and steadfast love with those who love him and keep his commandments, let your ear be attentive and your eyes open to hear the prayer of your servant that I now pray before you day and night for the people of Israel, your servants, confessing the sins of the people of Israel which have sinned against you. Even I and my father's house have sinned. We've acted corruptly against you. We've not kept the commandments, the statutes, and rules that you commanded your servant Moses. Remember the word that you commanded your servant Moses, saying, if you're unfaithful, I'll scatter you among the peoples. But if you return to me and keep my commandments and do them, though your outcasts are in the uttermost parts of heaven, from there I'll gather them and bring them to the place that I have chosen to make my name dwell there. They are your servants and your people, whom you've redeemed by your great power and by your strong hand. So, Lord, let your ear be attentive to the prayer of your servant and to the prayer of your servants who delight to fear your name, and give success to your servant today, and grant him mercy in the sight of this man." Then Nehemiah says, "I was the cupbearer to the king." Nehemiah did not immediately try and fix the problem. He recognized that he didn't have the answer, and he did the very first important thing. He didn't get distracted or forget about it. He prayed, and he exercised patience. He waited. A focused vision begins as a concern, but a focused vision does not require immediate action. A vision rarely requires immediate action. It always requires patience, and too often moving too fast gets way ahead of God. In fact, it takes time to mellow out. But why wait? Say, why should we wait? Well, first of all, because the vision matures in us. The vision matures in us. Not every good idea is a good idea or makes a vision. But every vision begins with a burden. And time allows us to distinguish between good ideas and visions that are worth throwing our lives after. Examine your motives, your emotions, your concerns. Is it major? Is it minor? It takes a baby 9 months to develop to the point that they're ready to enter the world. Immature visions that happen too quickly sometimes are weak. They rarely make it. A vision is about change. And the world takes change very hard. In case you haven't noticed, change is not welcome in many places. For a vision to survive, it must be mature and it has to be healthy, so when a cynical, critical, stubborn people get a hold of it, they won't kill it. Maturity takes time. But not only does the vision mature in us, but we mature in preparation for the vision. We mature in preparation for the vision. Not only does a vision take time to mature, but we mature. Sometimes we're not ready for the change. Just because you know what you want to do doesn't mean you're ready for it. God has to grow us into our vision. Action before preparation usually spells disaster. You remember that David was prepared before meeting Goliath, but David's brothers weren't. A God-ordained vision means that God goes to work in you to prepare you for what he knows lies ahead. Any vision that we have must be an extension of his vision, because his timing is always perfect, and sometimes our timing is way off a kilter. Philippians chapter 2, verses 13 and 14. You know this. It says, "It is God who works in you, both to will and to work for his good pleasure. So do all things without grumbling or questioning." God works to prepare us. And part of that is in accordance with his timetable. How many of you have ever had something that you wanted to accomplish and it was not God's will yet? And it took time for that to develop. All things include waiting. But if we have a vision, isn't it time to start? Having a vision makes us ready to endure the preparation. If you have pastors who aren't trained and have no idea what they're getting into, and then you throw them into a situation to which they've not been trained, what happens? Normally they fail. They're frustrated. But there's training. It takes time. Good idea, bad timing. Moses is in Egypt. Right? He grew up there 40 years. Was it God's timing for him to lead the people of Israel out of Egypt after those first 40 years? The answer is no. God sent him away into the desert for 40 more years to get Egypt out of him before he could go back and get the people out of Egypt. It took that long. Still had the vision. Why did it take so long? Do you remember Paul and his commission? Do you remember in Acts chapter 9? Paul was chosen. Barnabas went, got a hold of him, and was like, let's go. Well, what happened? Did Paul instantly go into ministry? No. Galatians chapter 1 tells us how long was Paul in the desert before God began to use him? Years. It was years. It was a desert experience. What's the deal with the desert? The desert seems to me to be a waste of time until you look back and you see how it made sense. Nehemiah waited. Now, he only had to wait 4 months, but he still had to wait, and he had to endure the time of getting up, doing routine stuff before God was ready to bring the vision to the light of day. That ever happened to you? You had to wait. Leading Israel through 40 years of a desert required one who knew how to live in the desert for 40 years. You ever think about that? Moses was in the desert for 40 years. Israel was in the desert for 40 years. He led them through it. He knew how to live. He knew how to do it. Also, the vision, God is at work behind the scenes preparing the way as it takes time and as we do not require immediate action. God's at work behind the scenes preparing the way. In a God-ordained vision, he is working behind the scenes to prepare the way. That's why we have to wait for his timing. Our personal vision is only a part, one piece of God's puzzle, of his magnificent masterpiece. Remember, God's vision is always bigger than our vision. You can't pull off your part without his help, or it will not last. Do you remember Heritage USA? Do you remember Jim and Tammy Baker, who had this vision for this great thing, but their timing was just way off? Nehemiah knew how this worked. He bided his time. He prayed, he dreamed, he planned, but he waited. All change happens slowly. You plant the seed and then you wait, because a focused vision demands that you understand the what before you understand the how. Focused vision demands that you understand the what before identifying the how. And that's an agonizing principle. What always precedes how. What is it God wants you to do? Here it is. How are you going to do that? I have no idea yet. You'll know what God has put in your heart to do before you know how he intends to bring it about. And sometimes the how comes late in the game. You almost assume it's lost. Oh, isn't this a terrible time of the year with the NCAA? games playing. I feel like I am snake bitten for any team that I turn on the TV and I watch. I turned on UCLA playing, I don't even remember. They were up by 23 points with 8 minutes to go. And whoever they were playing.
Michigan State.
Who?
Michigan State.
They were playing Michigan State. I was convinced that the game was over. But Michigan State wasn't. And that, with 30 seconds left, the game is tied. Sometimes we assume the vision is lost, but if you're playing basketball, you just keep right on going, because as Villanova knows, it's never over until it's over. It's not that sometimes we assume it's lost. It's not that the plan failed. If it's God's plan, it'll happen. But sometimes the how comes independent from our planning and not independent from our faithfulness. And that was Nehemiah's experience. He knew what God had called him to do. He didn't have a clue how God was going to work this out or how he was going to help it or make it happen. He was at a standstill. There was no way that this vision was ever going to get off the ground. Nehemiah's over in Iraq, and the people of Israel are in Jerusalem, and they don't even know the walls are down. But God knew how to secure Nehemiah's release. God had a plan for financing and overseeing the rebuilding of the walls. God had everything all worked out. He only needed the who. And by embracing the vision, Nehemiah became the who. So many visions die in between what and how. When how seems out of sight, it's tempting to put it out of our mind. Nehemiah didn't lose it. He still planned, but he knew that a divine vision necessitates divine intervention. Remember, Abraham took Isaac up to the mount with his son to offer as a sacrifice. He knew what, but he didn't know how God was going to provide. God did. Abraham obeyed. Joshua didn't know how God would assist him in conquering the land of Israel, but God intervened. And in Joshua chapter 10, one of the great chapters of all time. I love Joshua 10. Do you remember the hailstorm and the boys fighting and the sun remains silent or stands still in the sky, whatever? But God used hailstones to kill more of the Canaanites than the Israelites did with the sword. I mean, Joshua didn't know how God was going to conquer the land. He just followed and was faithful in doing it. You get the picture? Or should I talk to you about Ruth, Elijah, Elisha, Isaiah, Hezekiah, Daniel, Mary, Joseph, Peter, John, Paul? The point is, what God originates, God orchestrates. What God starts, he completes. How is never a problem for God, but it's a big problem for us. But how is God special? And the Bible teaches us pretty clearly that nothing is too difficult for God. For what he originates, he orchestrates. And when God puts something in your heart to do, he goes to work behind the scenes to ensure that it will happen. But in the meantime, you have to remain faithful to him and you have to stay focused on the vision. You're not actually responsible for figuring out how to pull off God's vision for your life. You're responsible to do what you know to do, what you can do, and then you wait for God to do the rest. Moses getting Israel out of the land of Egypt. Moses didn't have to have a roadmap to get the people of Israel. All he had to do was follow God. David didn't have to figure out how to get rid of Saul off the throne, did he? No, God had a plan. The disciples didn't have to figure out how to make 5 loaves and 2 fish, feed 5,000 people. God had that all figured out. The apostles didn't have to figure out how to spread the gospel around the world, did they? No, God took care of it. It was painful, but it worked. Here we are. God orchestrates events in such a way that those involved recognize God's hands. And these just ordinary people doing what they knew to do, never losing sight of the vision that God had birthed in their hearts. So staying focused, having a focused vision, keeps us God-focused. Keeps us God-focused. A vision is not a reminder, a vision is a reminder of our dependency on God. We remain aware that if God doesn't do something, there's not going to be any movement. And so people with vision, a God-given vision, live with a sense of expectancy. They look for God to do something. They live by faith. They live as if God is going to do what they believe that he promised to do. And so in light of divine vision, our daily faithfulness sort of takes on a new significance. It's no longer faithfulness for faithfulness' sake alone. It requires action or something significant won't get done. The how may come independent from our planning, but it will not become independent from our faithfulness. Our faithfulness is essential to success. And a person who is no longer faithful to God is one who does not have a vision from God and no sense of God's dealing in his life. When you have a divine vision of what God wants you to do, Any obstacle is just an opportunity for God to do what he does so well, and that's the impossible. You remember Peter and walking on the water? Do you remember that when he was focused on Christ, he was okay? When he was no longer focused on Jesus, he began to sink. While focused, he was walking on water. When figuring out how he was walking on water, he was treading water. When God gives you the vision to do something, our responsibility is to know what we know how to do and wait for God to fill in the blanks. Some people, when they get a vision, they will move so fast, they get ahead of God. We call them Navy SEAL Christians. No task is too challenging, no mountain too high, no problem too big. They live by Philippians 4:13. I can do all things, and they're going to do them. And sometimes they get way ahead of God. Remember, Peter started out that way. Do you remember when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane? He wasn't going to let anything happen to Jesus, and so he got out his sword and he cut off the slave's ear. He was on a mission from God, but he got in the way, and Jesus had to step him back rather than let God do things his way. If Nehemiah had done this, he would have packed his bags and been AWOL. He might have had to do all the work himself until it killed him, and it probably would have. There is something to God's timing. A focused vision answers specific questions, either in the vision or people who hear it should know it. And those 5 questions are: where are we going? Direction has to be within the parameters of purpose. How are we going to get there? What will it take to get there? How will we know when we get there? Well, what's the finished project going to look like? How much money is it going to cost? Who will take us there? Who are those who are in charge? And who will be responsible for what happens once we get there? Is it possible that there might actually be changes in personnel once we get there? A focused vision answers those 5 questions. Where are we going? How are we going to get there? How will we know when we get there? Who will take us there? And who will be responsible for what happens once we get there? And I probably should have made that easier for you by filling in some of those blanks ahead of time, but just thought you needed the exercise. Well, I needed a cup of coffee. So, maintaining focus on your vision. Maintaining focus on the vision. Should I back up? Done yet? I'll get out of the way. All right? There are three types of distractions that mess us up. By the way, weddings are a wonderful thing. You like weddings? I don't like weddings. I don't like to go to weddings unless I'm doing them, because then I'm getting paid to be there, okay? But the planning that goes into weddings is sort of interesting. There is so much time and preparation. People are booking weddings now a year and a half out just because they have to have the place for the reception and everything has to be exactly right. In fact, more time is spent on making sure that the wedding is perfect than on the marriage that follows the wedding. What's wrong with that picture? Preparing for an event that sets up a lifetime relationship like a wedding does to a marriage is often a distraction from the vision that's the end result, which is the marriage. Just think if couples would spend as much time preparing for their marriage as they do preparing for the wedding. Someone wrote, "Life is full of distractions. And visions are often lost among the many lights on the horizon of life. Important things are sacrificed for urgent things. What could be is often lost in a fury of what is. What should be gets buried under what must be." So regardless of the nature, the extent of your vision, regardless of how big it is or how small it may be, if you're not careful, you will get distracted because life is hard on visions. Life is now. Bills are now. The daily grind is now. Visions are for the future. And it's easy to lose sight of the main thing. It's easy to sacrifice the best for the sake of the good. And distractions can often and easily kill a vision. And there's three kinds of distractions that tend us to cause to lose our visions. That's opportunities, criticisms, and fear. I'll talk about that in a minute. And these three Nehemiah faced while he was working on completing his vision of seeing a safe and a secure Jerusalem. These three are the primary distractions that all of us will face as we endeavor to make what could be and should be a reality. Now, let's go back to Nehemiah and let's just talk about it. We won't read all the passages. But you remember that Nehemiah got to go to Jerusalem. And not only that, but he got the king to pay for all the bills and everything. And he got there, and you remember as he walked around, he met the people. They didn't even know that the walls were down. They had been there 100 years. It looked okay to them. They didn't know things were different. But Nehemiah had a vision of a safe and a secure. He saw walls, and he got the people starting to go, and he inspired them, and they started moving, and the walls came up very, very quickly. And just as things were getting done, Nehemiah had to deal with some major distractions. And as you recall, just as the walls were about to be finished, the doors needed to be put into the gates. And we're not talking about the little doors. We're talking about doors the size of this wall up the front here. Major big doors. And once again, Nehemiah's enemies started stirring up trouble. Sanballat, who was the big antagonist in Nehemiah's life, realized that the people of Jerusalem were getting close to complete the project, to seeing the vision come to fruition. And they were amazed that it happened. They were angry that the other people, that the Israelites, the Jerusalemites, were succeeding. Their military threats had not been very effective. They hadn't tried using young people as missiles and blowing themselves up in crowded cafes, as some people do today, but instead they came up with another plan. So instead of attacking the people, they decided to attack the leader. So we get to Nehemiah chapter 6, if you're in your Bible, verses 1 and 2. It says, "Now when Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem the Arab and the rest of our enemies heard that I had built the wall and there was no breach left in it, although up to that time I had not set up the doors and the gates, Sanballat and Geshem sent to me saying, 'Come, let us meet together at Hakaraim in the plain of Ono.' But they intended to do me harm." So they invited Nehemiah to a meeting. Meetings aren't bad. They wanted to get him out of town, but they also wanted to kill him. Surely that would have ended the operation. Nehemiah didn't know that the mafia had his number. All that he knew is that they wanted a meeting. Perhaps he thought it was a meeting looking for a peaceful solution, a peace agreement. After all, Jerusalem was now becoming a viable force. The city was back. The surrounding towns would have to deal with it. And normalizing relations with Jerusalem was certainly on the list of the towns and cities in the area. So why shouldn't they meet? And so look at Nehemiah's response, verses 3 and 4. He says, "So they intended to do me harm, and I sent messengers to them saying, 'I'm doing a great work and I cannot come down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and come down to you?' And they sent to me 4 times in this way, and I answered them in the same manner." Repeat after me out loud. "I am doing a great work and I cannot come down." Say that with me. "I am doing a great work and I cannot come down." Say it again. "I am doing a great work and I cannot come down." This time, emphasize the word great. Ready? "I am doing a great work and I cannot come down." The point is that Nehemiah was doing a God thing. It was a great work. It was an important work. God had given him the vision. God had placed on him the burden. God had orchestrated the circumstances. He provided the resources, people, energy. He couldn't get distracted from it. It was a great work that God was doing, and Nehemiah had to stay focused. He couldn't let up. He had to accomplish and complete the task. It's not that having a meeting with Sanballat was a bad thing. Making peace is a good thing. But God had called Nehemiah to rebuild the wall. And he didn't even know Sanballat's name when God called Nehemiah to the task back in Iraq. The opportunity for Nehemiah was a distraction, and in reality, Sanballat had evil up his sleeve. Now, I had you say those things out loud because the person sitting in front of me right here used to remind me of that. when my visions were getting distracted. Right, Pastor? I think you told me to say that out loud several times. Distraction number one is opportunities. Opportunities. There are always opportunities that come each way to us every day. Opportunities can pull us from the task that God has given us to perform. Entertainment, athletic, financial, relational, religious, career, investment, business, vacations, etc. Many of them are good. In fact, they might even be great opportunities. In the land of opportunity where we live, they come after us 24/7. But in order to accomplish the great things in life, we must learn to say no to some good things. In fact, the good things that may have the greatest potential to distract you from the best things, the vision things, the God things. If Nehemiah had accepted Sanballat's invitations, his enemies would have killed him. And that would have at least ended the vision for Nehemiah. There are appointments that we have, hobbies, relationships, invitations that will allow them to distract you. They will kill you in your chances of accomplishing your vision. When God has given you a great vision, you've got to say, I'm doing a great work and I cannot come down. When a good opportunity comes along that takes your focus off your vision, you have to say, I'm doing a good work and I cannot come down. When the temptation to squeeze one more thing into your day comes along that will take you away from your main focus, you have to say out loud, I'm doing a great work and I cannot come down. When the temptation to let your guard down as a single person to pursue a relationship that could compromise your purity or your integrity, you have to say, I'm doing a great work, I cannot come down. When you see more and better stuff, when you're trying to get out of debt and you're acquiring something else that's going to put you back into debt, you have to say, no, I'm doing a great work and I cannot come down. For every vision, there are dozens of potential distractions. Be careful to don't let good opportunities rob you of the joy of seeing your vision come to a reality. Work hard to distinguish between good things and the main things, between good opportunities and the things that you're called to do. Opportunities can distract us, but so can criticism. And Nehemiah certainly faced criticism. He had probably grown accustomed to this by the time he faced a project that was coming near to completion. And as we recall from the reading we just did, Sanballat sent Nehemiah the same invitation 5 times. 4 times Nehemiah said, I'm doing a great work, I can't come down. The 5th time, Sanballat sent a more detailed invitation, and that's verses 5 through 7. We read, chapter 6, in the same way Sanballat for the 5th time sent his servant to me with an open letter in his hand. In it was written, it's reported among the nations, and Geshem also says this, that you and the Jews intend to rebel. That's why you're building the wall, and according to these reports, you wish to become their king. And you've set up prophets to proclaim concerning you in Jerusalem, there is a king in Judah. And now the king, will hear of these reports. So now come down and let us take counsel together. So what did he do? Well, it seems like Sanballat did not have the normal protection that you would normally afford one another, but instead he opened the scroll and he created this rumor that Nehemiah was out to become the king. And I'm going to spread this untruth and I'm going to criticize him in order to try and pull him down. The tactic of spreading false rumors, of telling lies, is as old as Satan himself. It certainly was not true that Nehemiah wanted to be king. The Jews were not interested in breaking ties with Persia. After all, the king of Persia had a different philosophy than the Babylonians. They weren't going to rebel. Nehemiah was not going to be king. If he would have done that, he knows that he would have been hauled back to Persia and put in jail. He wasn't worried about it. He continued to work. Look how he responded in verses 8 and 9. He said to him, saying, no such things as you have said have been done. You're inventing them out of your own mind. For they all wanted to frighten us, thinking their hands will drop from the work and it will not be done. But now, O God, strengthen my hands. Short and sweet. Instead of chasing rumors, Nehemiah turned his attention back to the one who had given him the vision, and he said, O God, strengthen my hands. Acrimonious accusations are made that are exactly the opposite of what's trying to be accomplished. Ever have an acrimonious accusation made against you? Pursuing your vision? That was just absolutely untrue. Nehemiah had done everything everything right. He worked within the system, yet he was accused of being power hungry and wanting to make himself king. Ever have that leading a ministry where people said, oh, he's just all about the power. He likes that power. Acrimonious accusation. your first reaction is to become angry, isn't it? To say, oh, and get all distracted because of this thing. In fact, the fact that Sanballat posted this silly statement all over the place just sort of added the fuel to the fire. But instead of grabbing a sword and taking off Sanballat's head, which would have been a possible solution to the rumor, Nehemiah turned his frustration to God. And he said, oh God, strengthen my hand. Someone said, don't be distracted by criticism. Take your frustrations and anger to the one who got you into this thing to begin with. Time will tell who is right. The worst thing you can do is allow your anger to shift your focus. Instead of being accused of the opposite of what you're doing, those who acrimoniously accuse you will probably be doing the very same thing that they're accusing you of doing. People always find what other people are doing because that's what they do. That's how they see it in other people. And they need an explanation for why it is that people are pursuing their vision. Well, the critics lost confidence in what they finally saw, that God was in it. And remember what Paul said in 1 Thessalonians 5:24. He said, faithful is he who calls you, because he will also bring it to pass. And so it's true of every God-ordained vision. What God has determined to be will be, and our responsibility is to stay faithful. Opportunities, criticism. The last thing is fear. Fear. Not only did Nehemiah have to deal with opportunities and criticisms, he was placed in a life-threatening position. Look at verse 10 of that chapter. When I went into the house of Shemaiah, the son of Delial, I was confined to his home, and he said, let's meet together in the house of God within the temple. Let's close the doors of the temple, for they're coming to kill you. They're coming to kill you by night. And so he was told to run into the temple where only priests could go. But that's not what needed to happen here. And Nehemiah knew perfectly well that he shouldn't do that. And he didn't do it, by the way. He said he was doing a great work and he could not come down. Verses 12 and 13, we find the end of the story. For Nehemiah said, I understood and saw that God had not sent him, but he had pronounced for prophecy against me because of Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. For this purpose he was hired, that I should be afraid and act in this way and sin, so they could give me a bad name in order to taunt me. Like anger, fear is an emotion that takes our focus off of what is to be accomplished. We can't be focused on what might be, that we lose sight of what should be and could be. And fear causes us to evaluate our situation based on what bad things might happen rather than see what good things should happen or could happen. If we give in to fear, we'll fail. We'll come down off the wall. We'll quit. So don't let fear rob you of your vision for your church, your marriage, your parenting, your finances, your relationships, your career, your ministry. In light of God, what would cause you to retreat? Don't let opportunities or criticism or fear cause you to lose sight of your vision. Keep your eyes focused on the vision, on the finish line. For when distractions come, they will, and they will. Think of these things. You're doing a great work and you don't have time to come down. Success will always silence your critics. Might make them jealous. And the significance of your calling rules out the option of retreat. Stay focused on the vision. For it is when you're staying focused on the vision that God will accomplish what God has given you to do.